Listen up, lads. Welcome back to the Daily Crumper. And today, I'd like to talk to you lot about the Orc faction as a whole. Now that we are post Dataslate from September. And I figured, what better way to do so than with one of these weird Tierlist thingies that everybody seems to love so much? Figured I'd give it a try. So what I'd like to do is go through all 52, I believe, units in the Orc Codex, rank them on my own little ranking scale here, and just give you all my thoughts as to which greenskins I think are good and which ones are not. Because as of this last Dataslate, a lot of people are real hype on the greenskins. And I am too. Don't get me wrong. I think we's in quite a nice spot now, lads. Especially since some of them other big meanies of the meta got nerfed. I think it's definitely time for a resurgence of the Great War. So without further ado, let's get into this. First, I've got my ranking scale here. As you can see at the top here, I've got Chosen of Gork and Mork. These are going to be the units that you should absolutely run in every single Orc competitive army. They're the best of the best, never leave home without them. Next up is the good old grade A greenskins. These are some solid lads. Putting them in your list, you can never go wrong with, but you might not see them in every single list. Maybe they're only good in one specific detachment, or they just need a little bit of something more to be over the top, but otherwise, solid lads. Next up, Fine Gits. Fine Gits are what I'd say is balanced. They're good. You might bring one of them in a list instead of 2 or 3 units of them, but you can never go wrong with these lads, and I wouldn't fault you for bringing them. Next up is Need Some Fixin'. This is reserved for them lads who did not get the changes that they needed in the balanced Dataslate, whether that be points or rules changes or both. These are definitely some gits that I would hope that G-Dub would look after for the next Dataslate, but as of now, I would not bring them. And then finally down here at the bottom, Zoggin Useless. Unfortunately, we do have at least a couple units in our book, lads, that are downright trash. Wouldn't even bother looking at the data sheet. Leave them at home if you've even gotten the models in the first place. Never bring them. Wait till 11th edition, or at the very least, for the next Dataslate when maybe they'll get a change. So, first up we got the War Boss. The War Boss is a particularly fighty lad. He can go with all your big units that you want him to. Your boys, your knobs, your breaker boys, all of them. He's quite good, still cheap, even after he's gotten nerfed a couple times. Bringing him with 10 knobs, all rocking power claws, is still one of the best melee packages that the Orcs have to offer. I bring one of those packages in particular in each one of my lists competitively. I would put him in Chosen of Gork and Mork, hands down. Next up we got the War Boss and Mega Armor. Recently got a points cut down to 80 points. Quite cheap, he's only 5 points more than a normal War Boss. And with Mega Knobs also going down, you definitely might start seeing this lad again, particularly in Bully Boys. I wouldn't put him in every list though, so I think that's going to land him in grade A greenskins. Next up is the Beast Boss. Beast Boss has been real good for us for many months now. 80 points for this lad as well. Leads your Beast Snagger boys. Gives them +1 to hit, which helps out with the Beast Snagger boys' ability to reroll hits versus monsters and vehicles. He himself, as the Beast Boss, gets devastating wounds on the charge, which is very nice because it couples with his anti-vehicle, anti-monster 4-up weapons. He's a very solid lad. Beast Snagger boys are very prevalent in today's meta with all them big vehicles stomping around. So I would definitely put this lad in Chosen of Gork and Mork. Throw an enhancement on him. There's quite a few ones that are good. Hellwaller's Kill Chopper comes to mind. But he's very solid, lads. Wouldn't go wrong we're taking a beast boss with some beast snagger boys, for sure. Next up is going to be the beast boss on Squigosaur. Another unit that got some pretty good points cuts in this data slate. Is down to 110 points for this lad. That is pretty cheap for what you get. 110 points for toughness 8, 8 wounds, 5 up invuln save, 5 up feel no pain, and heroic intervention for 0 CPs. I mean, it's unfortunate that Squig Hogs are still terrible, but for 110 points, you might just start seeing this lad by himself. Just running around, being a nuisance, being durable, threatening that free intervention strat. He's not bad. Being a monster makes him a little bit harder to maneuver around the buildings and whatnot. But he's pretty cheap. I put him in fine. He was definitely needs some fixing before, but he's got enough to be in solid about now. Next up is good old Mozrog, and similarly to the Squig Boss cousin, got a good points cut. He's down to 145, so definitely a lot more expensive than his cousin, but still pretty cheap. What you're getting over the Beast Boss on Squigosaur is Mozrog has the 4 up invuln instead of the 5 up, so he's a bit harder to shift. And he of course has that 4 up fight on death, but importantly that's only when he's leading a unit, which means you have to bring him with the Beast Squig Hog boys, which again are not good. He does have that secondary ability, the bigger day is, gives him +1 damage versus monsters and vehicles, which is nice, but I mean his main weapon in melee is still only AP 1, which is useless against most tough vehicles nowadays because they're all rolling around with 2 up saves. So I'm not as high on Mozrog. I definitely think he could have gotten an extra AP or just went down even more in points, down to maybe 130, 135. So I'd say that Moz still needs some fixins because of all that. Alright, next up is good old Gazzy. So everybody's real high on Gaz due to the changes he's got. Now that he's allowed to lead knobs and boys, which then will allow him to give his leading buffs to said units. Given a 10-man Power Claw Knob Squad, +1 to hit and wound, means you automatically will get over that hump that we were stuck at before of Power Claws not being able to punch up into them harder targets like the tough 11s, tough 12s. So Gazzy helps out with that tremendously. Or even regular boys. Strength 5 boys in the wall with +1 to hit and wound. Being strength 5 already means that you're wounding most things in the game on at least 5s. So being able to make that 4s ups that damage amount tremendously when you're just looking about sheer volume of attacks that a big boy squad can put out. And like we spoke with before in that Dataslate video, when you ran Gaz, you typically only ran him with a couple Mega Knobs. And where Mega Knobs, they're durable, but only to a certain point, right? Toughness 6, 2 up save, 3 wounds apiece will only get you so far. But stick Gaz with 20 boys, and because of the boys later rule, you can also stick in something like Pain Boy to give him the feel no pain and the resurrection. Make him even harder to shift. It just means that Gaz himself is going to be protected for that much longer. And as we'll bring up with some of these other characters and other units as we go on, there's a lot of different new combos that Gaz can give out to these units that just opens the door to so many different possibilities. But even if you're just looking at Gaz himself, it's 235 for himself and Bakari. He gives the +1 to hit and wound with the unit he's leading, which is a big buff. Bakari gives out the 12-inch bubble of lethals during the war, which is a huge buff. If you're playing Bully Boys, he can do it for 2 turns because he can do the double war. Gazzy himself is one of the few reliable units in our book that can reliably flip tanks, so he already has a pivotal role because of that. So yeah, I don't really see very many downsides to Gaz anymore. Before he was a little bit too slow and hard to move up the board, but again, being able to put him with say boys means you can throw in something like a Weird Boy, and the Weird Boy can just jump Gaz up the board now. Or you can put him with any other character like a Pain Boy or something, and you can give him like an enhancement that gives them reroll advancing charges or something like that. Or you can use the here we go strat on the boys to make guys faster that way. I'm just not seeing very many downsides to this lad anymore. So I think he goes in Chosen. Chosen a Gork and Mork for the big gas boy. I think you're gonna see him on Orky tabletops all the time now. I don't see why you wouldn't bring him. So yeah, that's Gabs. Next up is Boss Snickrot. Snickrot also looking quite nice. Went down, what, 20 points, I think? Yeah, down 20 points on Snickrot, down to 75 from 95. That is a huge cut, lads. Having access to cheap infiltrating units is crucial in today's game plans on the tabletop. Because there's so many armies out there that can infiltrate, or they have big scout moves, or they just move fast natively and have things like advance and charge. These fast, hard-hitting, melee and or shooting armies that can just jump on top of you right out of the gate. So yous need infiltrating units to help screen or block or just take up real estate in the middle of the table, so your opponent can't just do that to you for free. And even with the change to commandos, Snickrot is still going to be the cheapest infiltrating unit you can bring on paper, so I still think he's fantastic. And I think you need him in every list because of that. I will still say that you can do a little bit of a pick your poison thing. If you want to run infiltrators, either run Snickrot and commandos or one or the other, but you definitely need at least one. So that's why I think Snickrot goes up there. Next up is going to be good old Zorgrod Ward Snagger, our named run herd from the Beast Snaggers. So this lad was pretty critical to our game plan back when Mordaka came out, because he had that stratagem that allowed you to put a unit into the war turn 1. So most of the time you would do it with something like Zodrog and his big pack of Grots, because he gave him that big scout move, gave him all those other buffs, and it made it just a super big nuisance on the table. But that got nerfed to the ground, and you can't really do that no more. So what does Zodrog do for us now? Well, for starters, he is 90 points now, because he did take some points hikes back when all that nonsense was going on. And even though it got nerfed, he has not gone back down in points. So at 90 points, that already means that good old Zodrog is more expensive than a War Boss, a Beast Boss, and a War Boss in Mega Armor. And as you can see, those are all three really good units. So does Zodrog have what it takes to play around with these lads? I don't think so. Now that his tricks are gone, I don't see bringing him. I wouldn't say he's particularly useless, because he does make a good big pack of Grots still really annoying to deal with. And since Grots are so zogging cheap points-wise, it helps kinda offset Zodrog's high price tag. But because of that high price tag, I'd say he needs some fixings. Not really rules-ways, but I definitely think he can deserve going down in points by 10, maybe 15 points. So yeah, that's where he goes. Alright, next up is the Death Killer War Trike, or Speed Freak's boss. So this lad is a little bit of a particular one. So again, he's 80 points, so right in line with the other lads that we just have access to. Well, the thing with him is that one, he is similar to the buggies in their issue, where he's just on a really zogging huge base, and he's a vehicle. So even though he moves pretty quick, it's kind of hard to maneuver him around buildings, or better yet, it's harder to hide him inside or behind buildings. So most of the time he gets caught out in the open and just gets shot because he's such a zogging huge model. But I think the main thing I'm worried about with him is his damage output. The Snagger Claw, it's strength 10, it's AP 2, it's 2 damage, so a typical Power Claw equivalent just on a boss. But it's only got 4 attacks, and that's the big kicker. Even on the wall, with 5 attacks, odds are he's not crumping 5 beaky marines at that rate. Like I get it, you can compare him to the normal war boss who also only has 4 attacks base, but he's at least got that ability that more than doubles the attacks he has during the war. The Death Killer doesn't have that. The Death Killer gives the +1 to hit to a unit he's leading, which he can only lead war bikers, but then his other special ability is he gives his unit the flat 6 advance, which is good in certain attachments. It's specifically good in Speed War, Cult of Speed, where you can advance, shoot, and charge, which is definitely where you want to run this lad anyways. But otherwise, like, bikers don't do a whole lot of damage in the first place, so him giving them the +1 to hit doesn't help out a whole lot. And again, if he doesn't do a whole lot of damage himself, means there's not really a big case to run him, except in Cult of Speed, and even then you probably only bring 1, maybe 2 max. I don't know. I think because of that, I'd say he's fine gets, because again, you are going to run him in Cult of Speed, but any other detachment, I would not bring him. So I think to offset it, we'll just have to put him in the middle of the road. But yeah, that's him. Next up, we got the Weird Boy. Now, the Weird Boy is definitely on the up and up, again, because of Gazzy. This is definitely the first character that we'll be going over, where Gazzy helps him out. But yeah, as we aforementioned, 20 Bricker Boys with Gaz and a Weird Boy, allowing Gaz to jump all over the table every turn, as long as he's alive. It's a really good utility piece, and again, helps out with one of Gaz's biggest weaknesses. And a Weird Boy's only 65 points, so he's still nice and cheap. I wish he'd get a new model. He's hoping for 11th edition, cross your fingers. But table-wise, he's very, very good, lads. Even if you didn't want to do the Gaz trick with the boys, if you just wanted to bring a Weird Boy by himself to be able to just be a cheap secondary scoring unit that can just teleport all over the board every turn, he's pretty good for that. Because at that point you can just look at him as an alternative to 5 Storm Boys. Well, yeah, I'd put him in grade A greenskins for sure. Next up is the Weird Boy, and this lad is going to be our first honorary member of Zoggin Useless. The Weird Boy, I talked about this in my Dataslate Wishes vid, but there's just no reason to take this lad. His abilities, awful. His weird eyeball lasers are awful. He is 60 points, so he is cheaper than the Weird Boy. But even for 60 points, there's a lot of other units in our book that we can take for 60 points that I would argue are much better than this lad. Like, 60 points gets you a 5-man burner squad, and them burners will do a lot more than this lad. I was hoping he'd get a change, but alas he didn't. This is something where he needs, at the very least, rules fixing. But whereas I could argue you might want to bring both Mozrog and Zodgrod in certain scenarios, or at the very least just for fun, the Weird Boy, I cannot say that. So as a result, Zoggin useless. Next up is the Pain Boy. Again, another orc character at 80 points. This lad, whatever unit he leads, he can give them a 5 Infernal Pain. And once per game, he can resurrect D3 models. He can lead all your typical orky units. He can lead boys, knobs, looters, burners, and tank busters. Typically, you see him with 20 packs of boys, because being able to give that large unit a Infernal Pain, it gets more bang for your buck at that point, because you want to be able to be stretching that 5 Infernal Pain as much as you can. The other thought was that maybe you could put him with a squad of knobs, because then being able to bring back D3 knob bodies at 2 wounds apiece with a 4-up save is going to be a lot more attractive points-wise than bringing back just D3 boys. But then the issue with that is that the knobs ability wants you to run a war boss with them to give them the -1 to wound. And if you put the Pain Boy with them, they don't incur that -1 to wound. So it's a little counterintuitive. So for that reason, you probably only run this with boys. And again, 20 pack of boys with Gaz and a Pain Boy, making them all dead hard, is really, really good. I wouldn't say bring it every time, but grade A greenskins is probably where I'd put the Pain Boy. Very solid unit. If you're running Green Tide, massive amounts of lads, you're probably going to bring a Pain Boy, maybe even 2, or maybe even 3. or even a 20 pack of boys in Warhorde with one of these lads ain't gonna do you no harm. So yeah, grade A green skins for this lad. Next up is the Pain Boss. Now the Pain Boss can only lead Beast Snagger boys, and similarly when he's leading them he gives them a 5 of Feel No Pain, which in this case isn't as impressive because Beast Snagger boys already have the 6 of Feel No Pain. So going from a 6 up to a 5 up is still good, but not as good as going from a nothing to a 5 up. Now you could still run Beast Snaggers in a 20-man group, and at that point the 5 up would probably make a bigger difference. But Beast Snagger boys are a lot more expensive than normal boys. A 20 pack of them is going to be 190 points. So plus the Pain Boss at 70 points, it's going to run you 260, which is pretty expensive for that package. So he's very niche. And because that leader spot in the Beast Snagger boys is typically going to be taken up by the Beast Boss, it means you really have no reason to bring this lad. So even though he's basically a carbon copy of the normal Pain Boy, but cheaper, and only can lead Beast Snaggers, honestly, he's pretty useless. You're just never not gonna bring the Beast Boss. So maybe that's more like an opportunity cost thing. If you wanted to make the Pain Boss better, you'd probably have to give him a better ability, or maybe just make his melee weapon like really Zorg powerful, so he can just be a medic that just hits things really hard and is cheap, and that could be like his niche. But unless they do something like that, I don't see a reason to bring him. Alright, next up is going to be your basic mech boy. So the mech boy is a cheap little run that runs around. He's only 45 points. He can fix up your rigs and give one of your vehicle units a +1 to hit, which is very good for vehicles that want to get in and blow stuff up. Ones that can deal a lot of damage, namely your Death Dreads, your Gork and Morkanauts, and most importantly, the Stomper. So yeah, if you're running a detachment like Dread Mob where you want to run a bunch of big walkers that want to do a bunch of damage, you're definitely going to bring a couple mechs along to not only be able to fix them up a little bit and give them pluses to hit, but also just to be a little lad running around, taking objectives, doing secondaries, getting your points. Namely, his ability is specifically to only a vehicle model to give the +1 to hit to. So you can't really use this Git to run along with 6-man Killer Can squads or the 6-man Deathcopters. So that's one little caveat to him. But again, if you're running Dread Horde or Dread Mob, I'd definitely bring this lad. At the end of the day, he's just really Zorg cheap. So for that, I'd put grade A green skin. Alright, next up we got the Big Mech. Just a normal standard Big Mech. This lad is a little bit of an odd one. He's 70 points. He can lead boys, looters, mech guns, knobs. His ability is whatever unit he's leading, he gives them reroll ones to hit with shooting attacks, which isn't great because again, orcs ain't really a shooting faction. Best unit that can benefit from that is probably looters, but at the same time, looters reroll ones natively anyways, so it's a little bit redundant. Putting them with mech guns would probably be the next best option. His other secondary ability is if he's leading a unit, whenever that unit makes an advance or fallback move, they can move through enemy models and terrain, which is pretty niche. It's kind of nice when it comes up in certain situations. If you're playing against like AdMech or something and they're trying to move block you, then being able to take your big mech squad and just move over them screens is pretty nice. But I don't think those niche cases is quite worth running this lad. But in certain builds, I could definitely see you taking him. So I'd put him in fine gits. 70 points is pretty nice. But yeah. Next up is the Big Mech in Mega Armor. This lad's a bit more pricey at 90 points. Similarly, he gives whatever unit he's leading reroll ones with shooting. And his other ability is in your command phase, he can bring back one bodyguard model back to the unit. He can of course only lead Mega Knobs, being as he is a Mega Knob himself. And bringing back Mega Knobs every turn is quite nice, but for 90 points, he's about the points equivalent of 3 Mega Knobs. So you kind of have to debate whether you want to bring this lad or just more Mega Knobs in the first place. The one time that you really see this lad is in Tactics Brigade, because you can give him that Captain enhancement that allows him to attach to Flash Gits, and giving Flash Gits reroll ones to hit and resurrecting a dude every turn is quite nice. So that's definitely a niche case that you would want to run this lad, but that's probably the only case I'd say you want to run him. Maybe in Bully Boys, I don't know, I'd put him in fine. Not too shabby. Next up is the Big Mech with Shock Attack Gun. Now this lad's been nerfed quite a few times, but recently finally went down in points in the latest Dataslate. Only went down 5, so he's back to 80, which still brings him in line with the rest of the Big Mechs. This lad again gives whatever he's leading reroll ones to hit, and his other ability is whatever he shoots at, that unit has to then take a battle shock test because he's firing a snotling at the speed of Gork and Mork directly at the opponent, which is quite scary indeed. But he's pretty good. The main draw of him is that big shock attack gun itself. It's D6 plus 1 attacks, strength 9, it's AP 4, and it's D6 damage, which is a very good profile. You typically see this lad with tank busters. To be able to give them gets the reroll ones, plus the Big Mech will then benefit from the tank busters plus 1 to hit and wound versus vehicles if you're targeting them, which helps out with the shotgun's strength 9. Well, he's really good. You see him in Tactics Brigade, you see him in more DACA, sometimes you even see him in Warhorde just because tank busters are so prevalent still, because of the meta we're in. So I put this lad back in grade A green skins. Next up, we are now out of the characters, we're on to the good old boys. Boys are universal, they're very nice. 80 points for 10 of these lads, 170 for 20. You can throw a power claw on the knob, put a rocket in the squad. They are sticky objectives, that's their ability. They're very nice, whether you just want to keep a cheap 10-man to hold your backfield, sticky objective, then run out into the midboard. Or maybe you want to throw them in a truck and just have it rocket up the board turn 1 as just a very cheap, high OC, point securing package. Or you can run Green Tide, which is obviously the detachment that's literally all about boys. And I think Green Tide is actually really good right now, for many reasons. So, for those reasons being, I put him in Chosen and Gork and Mork. I always run at least one squad, again, at least to just be able to stick in objective and run away. But it's very good. In terms of battle line troops, you can't go wrong with the lads. Next up is the Beast Snagger boys. A bit pricier than 95 points for 10, and 190 for 20. Can only be led by the Beast Boss, but we know the Beast Boss is very good, as we've seen previously. So, as for the same reasons I said with the Beast Boss, I'd put him again in Chosen to Gork and Mork. I always run at least one unit. Sometimes, if you're in a particularly heavy vehicle meta, again like we are right now, you might want to see 2 units of these lads. But they're very good. Can't go wrong with them. Next up is the Grots, and third in a row, these are going straight up to Chosen to Gork and Mork as well. You never leave home without a Grots. The main reason being is, well, there's a few reasons really. First up, they're just so zogging cheap, lads. You get 11 models, 11 gits for 40 points, and each of these Grots are 2 OC. That is the cheapest unit in the game for the amount of just models you can put on a table. And on top of being high OC, they also can help farm your command points. Because for every objective there's on a 4-up, you get another CP. And CPs are very important in today's 40k. So I say it's fantastic. Even if you want to bring a big 22 model squad, it's still only 80 points. You can use them to screen, either in the midboard or in your backfield against deep strikers, use them to hold down your home objective, run them up the board onto your natural expansion objective to force your opponent to come out and take them out with something. They's fantastic. Put them in every list, hands down. Alright, next up is the Burner Boys. So the Burner Boys, I think these need fixing. And the reason being is that they kind of fit a weird role right now. They's really cheap. For 5 Burner Boys, it's 60 points. So usually if you see some of these lads on a list, it's because You're usually at the end of list making. Say you have some flash kits that you're rolling around in some trucks with some breaker boys or some tank busters or something. You're running the SWAT team setup. Maybe you have your 5 knobs with the war boss and then 5 flash kits all in one truck together. And you're over the 2,000 point limit by just 10 or 15 points. Usually what you're going to do is cut them flash kits in favor of burner boys, because they feel that same role of just being cheap bodies to help you get points. It's just burner boys aren't as durable or as effective at doing what they's doing in flash kits. But if you need them to just hop out of a truck, do an action, and then get blown off the table, that's kind of what you're going to use them for. But in that same vein, there's a lot of units we have in the book that fit that same role. You have the new commandos that can split into 5s. You have Snickrot that can do that for pretty cheap. Same thing with just Storm Boys. Or like we said, just a lone weird boy, just jumping around the board, getting the objectives. You can do it with them. So in that case, Burner Boys, they fill a single role that is typically taken up by other units. I wanted them to get fixed, because another downside to them is that them burners, they're just D6, strength 4, AP0, 1 damage, auto-hitting shots. There's basic flamers. I was really hoping that they get an extra AP, or at the very least an extra strength in the Dataslate, to try to make them a little bit more interesting. Their rule is that they get the reroll 1s to wound, or reroll all wounds if they's on an objective, which is nice. Helps offset that strength 4, but being AP nothing, you're not really going to kill too much with these lads. So yeah, I think they definitely need some fixing because of that. Next up is the looters. Looters were shit for a very long time, and then when Mordecai came out, they all of a sudden became the most busted unit in the game. Because turns out, when you take a unit that typically only hits on 6s, but has access to 4 rerolls, as well as something like sustained hits too, then even though they can't hit for shit, they end up getting so many extra sustained hits that they end up hitting more than 100% of their shots anyways, just because they pour out so many Zoggin dice. I hadn't put looters on the table prior to Mordecai since 7th edition. Maybe the start of 8th. They were just that bad for so long. And then they were good for like a month, but then they got nerfed into the ground. Well, really, Mordecai got nerfed, and then the looters caught a little bit of a points hike, but recently they just went back down to their 100 points for 10 of them, or 50 points for 5. So because of that, I think if you're running like Dread Mob, they ain't bad, because you can still give them access to sustained hits. Only sustained hits 1, and most of the time you're going to end up being hazardous because of it. But it still ain't bad. I'd say they're fine. Because at the end of the day, if you just want to use them as like a cheap objective unit, again like burners, they can do it for cheaper, because 5 of them's only 50 points, versus the burners are 60. They's alright. Next up is Storm Boys. Storm Boys going into Chosen of Gork and Mork. As I've said in many videos of my unit reviews, you need at least 1 unit of Storm Boys in your army, ideally 2. 1 to stay in Deep Strike to wait for secondary missions later in the game, and then a second one to start towed up in front of your line to be ready to hop into the mid board turn 1 to do a bunch of potential secondaries that require you to be there in the first turn. And they still remain real cheap, 65 points for 5. You're not going to run them in 10 mans. You could maybe do in Tactics Brigade because they become battle line, but most of the time you'll stick them in 5s. And you will indeed run them in every single list, if you're wanting to be competitive. So yeah, that goes there. Next up is Commandos. I've got the old picture of the Commandos here, but well, we know here's a new one. So they got a very nice particular change with the Dataslate, that being that you can now split the 10-man Commandos into 2 5-man units. So that's 2 infiltrate units for the price of 1 now, lads. And that's a good deal. We love good deals. Now, they still stayed at their previous points cost, that being a pretty high 120 points. It is quite pricey. Again, if you think of them as 2 5-man units for 60 points apiece, it's not bad. Again, there's going to be the toss-up between these lads and Snickrot, but you're definitely going to run one of them. So, because of what I said for Snickrot, I think the commandos do have to go in Chosen to Gork and Mork, meaning that you're going to run at least one of them between the two, just because again, there's so many scouts and infiltrate threats in other armies nowadays. So yeah, there's where they go. Then next up is the Tank Busters. Again, these are the old ones, or just think of them as the new lads. Tank Busters really helped fill the niche when they got their update, that being an effective can opener for enemy vehicles, and they do a pretty good job at it. +1 to hit and wound versus vehicles, all of them rocking their rocket launchers, D3 shot, strength 9, AP2, 3 flight damage. Even though they strength 9, the +1 to wound helps punch up into those harder vehicles anyways. They keep getting points increases, but you still have to bring them just because without a credible shooting threat in your army, your opponent's just going to be able to take advantage of it. I always say having at least one big gun in your army is better than having no guns, purely just because of the threat of it. Because if you're playing against like a Hume Imperial Guard army, and you tell them that you have no big, crazy shooting units that are going to kill them tanks, then the Hume player is going to take advantage of that, deploy all their stuff out in the open, because again, they don't have to worry about getting shot at. They just have to worry about bubble wrapping their tanks and screen and use off of them. So having something like Tank Busters to help punch into them, or at the very least, scare them enough to where they have to sit back and maybe they're not in the great of a position to shoot you, that's why you're going to need them. So, Tank Busters, Chosen to Gork and more. Seems like there's a lot of things I'm throwing in here, but rather than some other channels using this as the busted, needs to get nerfed, G-Dub please fix type category, I'm mainly using this as your go-to competitive staple orc units, especially in this new meta with this new data slate with the greenskins on the rise. So that's how I'm going about it. And then next up is Knobs. Knobs going right up there too. Like I've said, a 10-man group of Knobs with Power Claws and a War Boss is just a very good, durable, hard-hitting, lots of volume of big quality damage attacks in melee that is hard to get rid of because it's 10, toughness 5, 2 wound bodies with a 4-up armor. Most of the time they're going to have a 5-up invuln because they're going to be in the wall when you come charging out with them. They get the -1 to wound with the War Boss leading them, and then now that Ghazi can lead them as well, giving all them Power Claws +1 to hit and wound from Ghazi leading them is going to put them way over the top. It's a fantastic unit. They are pricey. A 10-pack of Knobs is going to run you 210 points. Throwing a War Boss, you're looking at 290. Throwing Ghazi, you're looking at over 400 points. But it's a very big, hard-hitting hammer unit. You probably don't run 2 10-packs. You either run 1 10-pack with a character or 2 5-packs with characters leading them. Regardless, they's going to be in a truck, because you need to make sure that they get into the fight when they need to. They's fantastic. That's where they's going. Alright, next up is the Mega Knobs. So these lads got a pretty good points decrease. -5 for 2, -10 for 3. If you want to run a big 6-man, it's -20, down to 190 for 6 of these lads. So why I was saying that Bully Boys is probably back on the menu with these lads now, because you can run a full 18 of them for less than 600 points, and because of that, they're just really tough bodies that you might just be able to spam for that cost. I'm gonna put them in grade A and green skins. Can't tell whether you're gonna need them in every game necessarily, but because they're gonna be really zorgin good in that Bully Boys detachment, and you probably have to bring them in Bully Boys, that's where I believe they're gonna end up. Next up is Flash Kits. Flash Kits went back down to their previous cost, that being 80 for 5 and 160 for 10. Like we said, with the Mega Armored Big Mech, he's still really good with a 10-pack of these lads in Tactics Brigade, running that Mech Captain enhancement. And 5-man flash kit units are pretty good too. Like we said previously, put something like 5 knobs in a war boss, along with 5 of these flash kits in a truck. Gives you a good package in a transport to be able to run around the board, hop out, do some skirmishing, get you some secondary points, hold some primary objectives. It's just pretty good. Would you run them on every list? I don't know. Running them little SWAT team packages in the trucks is definitely a specific way that not everybody's going to run them like. So because of that, I'm going to put him in grade A greenskins. Because he's pretty good. Maybe just not an auto include. Breaker Boys are going to be a little bit similar. They fill the role as another melee-only tank-busting type unit. And whereas before, Breaker Boys were a bit better than just your typical knobs at cracking open cans because of their 3 flat damage and their anti-vehicle weapons that could wound them on 3s. Now, with Gaz being able to give +1 to wound and knobs, kinda makes it to where Breaker Boys aren't as needed. But you still can't go wrong with them. I'd say the worst part about them is their volume of attacks, because they only have 2 attacks per Breaker Boy. Put them in a war, they get 3. If you're in Warhorde, they got sustained hits, which helps offset the low amount of dice. But low amount of dice means you're not going to be proccing them sustained hits as often. So that's probably my only gripe with them. Other than that, they're pretty solid. 6 models, so you can run 2 squads of them in 1 truck. Fills up the space quite nicely. I put them in grade A greenskins. Next up is the Squighog Boys, and I definitely don't have as much nice things to say about these kits. I was really hoping they was going to get some love with the Dataslate, which the Kill Rigs did, oddly enough, and the Beast Boss and Squigosaur and Mozrog did. They just forgot the Hog Riders. They really needed to be cheaper, or to get an extra AP on these melee weapons. Or make it to where the Hog Riders hit back on 3s again, like they did in previous editions. But without that being a thing, again, as they are now, you're looking at 150 Zoggin points for a small squad of these lads. 4 models, 150 points. 8 models, the max squad, 300 points. That's way too much, lads. At their current stats, they could afford to go down like 10 points a model, at least. They really suffered with the change of the edition, being that the knob on Squigosaur, the knob on Smasher Squig no longer exists. He's just the sergeant in the squad now. But before, when he was his own character, he gave the Squighog Boys +1 to hit in melee. Now that these don't have that, they just don't hit nearly as efficiently as these did before. I don't think they're quite Zoggin useless, but they definitely need some fixing. Next up is Warbikers. Warbikers got a points decrease, which is interesting. It's nice, I guess. It is now 65 points for 3 of them, or 130 points for 6. So if you plan on running 18 Biker Boys in Speed War, you're gonna get 30 points off. Not that you's needed, because Cult of Speed is already so Zoggin cheap. You can run 10 buggies, 18 bikes, 18 Deathcopters, and maybe still have 100 points left to spare. It's just a very big army if you're running that. And again, the bikers themselves, I mean, we spoke about this a little bit with the War Trike, but they don't really do a whole lot of damage. If you want to keep it cheap, 3-man to be able to jet up the board, do some secondaries, it's not bad. Maybe put them in reserve or something. But even the 6-man squads in Speed War ain't super great. I'd say they's fine. 1 unit in your army is probably not too bad. Next up is Deathcopters. Deathcopters is interesting. days went down, not this past Dataslate, but I believe the one prior to that, 3 months ago, down to 80 points for 3 of them, which is pretty cheap for what she's getting. Because the Deathcopters, they move 12, they're toughness 6, they've got a 4 up armor save, 4 wounds apiece, and a 6 up invulnerable. They pack a decent amount of rockets, and they can put some mortal wounds out on some units that they fly over. So they do some pretty decent damage for the amount of points is invested in them. So because of that, I think they're actually pretty zogging good. And like the aforementioned Speed War detachment, they are pretty critical. Because some of the stratagems in that detachment to be able to give your Deathcopters sustained hits or lethal hits makes their shooting output really zogging good actually. So because of that, I think I'm going to put them in grade A green skins. I could see you running them in other detachments, in just the cheap 3-mans again. But Speed War, you need as many of these lads as you can take for that detachment to really even function properly in the first place. So yeah, that's where they go. Now we're going to hit the big stretch of buggies. So first up, we got the Squig Buggy. I think it's just poorly designed. An indirect orc unit that hits on 6s is not going to do what you want it to do. Really, all these buggies need fixing. I can kind of just lump them all together. They're not completely useless because they're just so cheap that you could just take them, and if they end up killing a couple beaky marines, they probably make their points back anyways. But really they need a points rewrite, because the issues is individually each buggy doesn't do very much by itself. They don't have super high OC, so they can't battle over objectives. They don't have great shooting attacks. They don't have great melee attacks, or in some cases no melee at all. Their datasheet abilities are niche to bad. Like the Booster Blaster being able to suppress a unit isn't terrible. The Shock Jump Dragster's ability to deep strike somewhere is good, but the issue being that these buggies are so sogging big and take up such a big footprint that being able to deep strike gets kind of hard anyways. The Scrapjet doing impact mortal wounds, not great. The Boomdacker's -1 to hit aura is niche and hard to get off. And the Squig Buggy chucking that bomb once a game is fine, but it's not really guaranteed. I think all of these need a big damage boost rules-wise, and alongside it, a points increase, which I'd be fine with as long as the damage goes up. But without that, I don't see you running any of these, even in Speed War. Alright, next up is the mech guns. Mech guns are pretty cheap. They're only 50 points per individual mech gun, and you can run them in squads of up to 3 if you wanted to. I think my main issue with mech guns is they are an artillery piece, or at least they seem to be designed like that, but none of the weapons you can take on them are indirect, so they need direct line of sight. And since they only move 3 inches a turn in your movement phase, it makes it really zogging hard to position these lads. So you'd almost have to start the game with them in direct line of sight of whatever it is they want to shoot, which is bad because most, if not any unit in the game, if it can be seen, it will be shot and killed. Even something super zogging durable like a Land Raider or a Knight or something like that, if your opponent can just see it right out the gate with whatever it is that they want to shoot it with, it will die. 40k 10th edition is very, very lethal. And with these mech guns, even though they're pretty cheap, so if they do just get shot off the board turn 1, it's not like you're losing a big points investment. You'd really rather not just lose them in the first place. So therefore, you'd probably take them out of your list and take those points and pour it into a different shooting unit that is more maneuverable and easier to hide, like the aforementioned tank busters or even looters at that point. So I think these need a rework. I think they should just make them carbon copies of the artillery pieces from the Humi Gits. Give all their weapons heavy, make them indirect, So because they man by grots, they'll hit on 4s, they'll take the -1 to hit for firing indirect, but then the heavy rule will help offset that penalty, and just make all the different guns different variations of them indirect weapons, and then we'll have some to talk about. So for now, I put them in, need some fixing because of that. Next up, we got the good old truck. Now, remember back at the start of the edition when trucks were 50 Zoggin points? These were the best transport in the game. Easy. Even then, they're still one of the best transports in the game. It's just now that we've had Codex creep and other books have came out, you have other armies with things such as Sagittars or Tauroxes and Chimeras, which are about the same if not better than the truck. Because what the role the truck fills is, it's more of a philosophy, lads. If you have a big, scary unit that is meant to kill a lot of your opponent's army, and maybe it's more on the fragile side, and you don't want them to die, a lot of orc units like that in our book are like that. They do a lot of damage, but they don't take a lot of damage, because even though we use toughness 5 now, we still have bad armor saves. 4-up save, 5-up armor save. We only get a 5-up invuln 1 turn a game. So usually we want to hit the opposing lads hard and fast, kill them all, so that way on the smackback they don't have as many pieces to take out our boys, and it allows them to get an early lead and just steamroll the opposing gets. What helps you do that? Something like a truck. Because if your knobs with your war boss are just standing out in the open without a truck or anything to help bubble wrap them, again, they will get shot and they will be killed before they get to get in and crump them gits. The truck will make them faster because it moves 12 inches, and your opponent, if they want to get at them knobs or them tank busters or the breaker boys or whatever it is that you have inside there, they have to kill the truck first before they can get to your juicy meaty gits inside. So because of that, trucks going and chosen a Gork and Mork. I run typically anywhere from 3 to 5 trucks in most competitive orc lists. At least if I'm running something like Bully Boys or War Horde, or even Tactics Brigade. 10-man flash gets in a truck, 2 packs of tank busters in a truck, 10 knobs of the war boss in a truck, whatever it is, you gotta bubble wrap your gits or else they will die before they get to do what they want to do. And even though the truck has taken multiple points increases over the edition, it's still sitting at 70 points, which still is pretty zoggin cheap for a vehicle. And if all else fails, if the truck does get to where it needs to be without dying and it offloads the cargo inside and now it's just an empty transport, well now it's just this 12-inch moving vehicle that you can zip around the board, start holding objectives because it's got good OC at 2 or maybe 3, and it can do secondary objectives and get to certain places where you need to do them secondary objectives quickly because of the 12-inch move. So yeah, trucks are great. All around, one of the best units in the book, honestly. Next up's the Battle Wagon. Now, the Battle Wagon I wasn't super high on before, because really it's just filling the same role as the truck, as being a transport to let your gits get to where they need to be. But in the Battle Wagon's case, it's much larger, model-wise, and it costs a lot more points. A Battle Wagon currently is going to be 160 points. Now, you is getting a pretty beefy profile for that points cost. 10-inch move, toughness 10, 3-up armor save, 16 wounds, and 5 OC with a 6-up invulnerable save. If you put the odd case on it, goes all the way up to toughness 12, which most of the time you're going to want to. It gives us a Land Raider equivalent for not Land Raider prices. And whereas before, again, I wasn't super high in the Battle Wagon, with Gazzy's big change being that he only takes up 4 spots in a Zoggin Battle Wagon, it means you can run a lot of gits alongside Gazzy in this big truck. And because I think you're going to be seeing that a lot with Gaz on the table now, due to his weight loss routine he just finished, I think you're going to see it a lot more. Probably not in every list, but you're gonna see it in a lot, at least one battle wagon to run gas with. So I don't quite think it's in Chosen the Gork and Mork, but I definitely think it is a grade A green skin. Next up is the good old Killer Cans. So they just got that change to their shooty power trip rule to where they're not going to hurt themselves as much anymore, which is very nice. It's a good quality of life change. Killer Cans, they are relatively cheap. It's 125 points for 3 or 250 points for 6 of them. Their damage output is actually not too bad. They're piloted by Grots, so they're going to hit on 4s with shooting. And you can give them all rockets, or even the Grot Zukas aren't too bad at chaff clearing, and the melee weapons are actually really zogging good. But again, since they're Grots, that means they're going to be hitting on 5s, and I don't think there's any way to increase that. But the main issue with the Killer Cans is just that they move pretty slow, and they are a vehicle unit, meaning that at the very minimum, a 3-model squad of these lads is going to take up a big footprint, and it's going to be very hard to maneuver it around the table, especially with all the highly densely packed terrain layouts that we play now. So I wish there was a way to get them to move faster and still be able to shoot, charge, do whatever it is that they need to do. I don't think you can fix that. I mean, unless they randomly just wanted to make Killer Cans move 10 inches for whatever reason. I don't know. I'd say they're probably fine. If you're running Dread Mob, you're probably going to run these lads, but probably nothing else. So these ain't bad. Alright, now next up is the Death Dread. So, the Death Dread got a big change. Its previously not great rule of forcing battle shock tests at the start of the fight phase is now being changed to impact mortals, similar to the Dreadnoughts in other armies. He didn't go down in points, so he's still 120 points, but whereas before I think that was way too expensive for what you got with this lad, the fact that he just does more damage means it's a bit more acceptable, so I don't think he's as bad as he was before, but I still don't think he's great. His fundamental issue is still, again, similar to the Killer Cans, that it's a vehicle that doesn't move very quick, that wants to get into melee. But whereas with the Killer Cans, they could still shoot and play the line of sight game pretty well. The Death Dread, whereas you can give it guns, you really don't want to, because it's an orc piloting it, meaning that it hits on 5s. There is one funny tactic that I want to try with this lad, and that is running a Death Dread in Dread Mob, and instead of giving it melee weapons, just give it 4 custom Mega Blasters, because that means it's going to pour out 12 custom Mega Blaster shots, and if you press the button, it's going to get sustained hits and give itself hazardous, but it's going to have hazardous anyways. So it just means that this thing can pour out a whole bunch of custom Mega Blaster shots and blow up whatever it is it looks at, and then probably blow itself up on the back end in the process, just because it's going to be taking so many hazardous checks at the -1 due to how that rule works. So it's pretty funny. I don't think it's viable, but the Death Dread by itself as a melee unit, again, pretty slow. It's niche. Not terrible though. I would say it's fine. Whereas before it was need some fixings, now it's fine. You might see it. We'll see. Next up's the Kill Rig. So this unit also got changed. The Buzzsaws are AP2, which is fantastic because AP1 melee weapons don't really cut it nowadays. Especially if they're meant to be high quality attacks. The Kill Rig's ability to give +1 strength out to nearby orc units is still fantastic. If you roll the big 6, you can give them lethals, which is also great, if a little swingy. The auto-hitting las cannon shots off the word tower is still fantastic, and it's still zogging cheap for what you get, lads. A Kill Rig is looking at 155 points for that big zogging thing. You're looking at toughness 10, 3-up save, 16 wounds, with a 6-up feel no pain. It's pretty hard to chew through, especially at that price point. My hot take is that you're probably going to start seeing 3 of these things running around the tables nowadays. Like, yes, they're still big. They take up about as much, if not more space than one of them big 10 boy knights, But whereas with the knights, you kind of still want to try to hide them because you're paying so many points for them, a kill rig at 155 points, that's cheaper than a battle wagon. And if you're running 3 of them, your opponent can only shoot so many anti-tank shots a turn. You might just want to take 3. So we'll have to see if they go into Chosen of Gork and Mork, if that becomes the meta orc list. That'd be insane, but for now, I'm definitely putting in grade A greenskins. And then with the next one, Hunter Rig, which is a very similar stat line, actually it's the exact same stat line, but for even cheaper this time, it being 135 points. 135 points for that stat line? It's not going to do as much damage output, because it doesn't have the word tower for that shooting threat, and its data sheet ability isn't nearly as good. Its data sheet ability being, I believe it's called On to Hunt, and all that does is if you have a unit embarked within it, it gives the Hunter Rigs additional Butcher Boys attacks, more attacks, but whereas the Saw Blades got the extra AP buff, the Butcher Boy attacks did not. But for 20 points cheaper than a kill rig, I mean, if your list comes out to like 2005, 2010 points, you might switch one kill rig for a Hunter Rig. Just because again, the stat line and the melee output is just so zogging good, to where I'd probably also have to put in grade A greenskins, just for the points cost. Yeah, that's where it's going. Next up's the planes. We could probably lump all the planes together similarly to the speed buggies. And that being that aircraft and planes in general in this edition are just not good, they're not viable. The plane rules are clunky and not thoroughly tested and just kind of bad. They have to start the game off the board, and when they do come on the board in turn 2, they have to come on touching the edge of the board, meaning that you're not going to get some great lines of sight most of the time. A lot of orc shooting units went down in the amount of shots they pour out in 10th edition, because G-Dub didn't like how many dice those orc boys were throwing out each game. But because we don't have as many dice we're rolling, but we still hit on fights with shooting, means that these planes just aren't really doing a lot of damage in the first place. The best one out of the lot is probably the Waz Bomb, but that's also the most expensive one by far because of it. It's 175 points for that thing, but it's still only pouring out like 2 D3 Waz Bomb shots and like 1 Smasher Gun shot, I think. They're good shots and they hit on 4s, but you're still not going to have good odds of hitting whatever you're shooting at. So because of that, I'm putting all of them in Zogging useless. They's not good, and you're not going to see them on the table until at least 11th edition, if they don't just get rid of them altogether. Because G-Dub has straight up come out and said that they don't want planes and flyers to be good, because they don't want to relive the meta madness that it was last edition with specifically the Speedwall planes and other things like the Void Raven bombers and whatever the AdMech flyers are. So they purposefully make rules for these to where they're not competitively viable. So yeah, it sucks. I miss me Air Force War, but maybe next edition, lads. We only got a few units left here, so next up is our big Titan Walkers. We're going to start out with the Gorkanaut. Gorkanaut is 265, and where I'm going to go at with these two, both the Gorkanaut and the Morkanaut, is they are knight chassis, effectively. They are the orky version of what a knight would be in an Imperium army. They're toughness 12, 3 up save, 20 wounds, 6 up invulnerable save, 8 OC. At least for the Gorkanaut. But whereas with the Knights, you're paying upwards of 340 to 380 to sometimes 400 points for one single Knight model. In the Orcs, for a Gorkanaut specifically, you've only got to pay 265 for one of these lads. That is pretty zogging cheap, again, for what you're getting. And with our Orky Knights, they also double as transports. So again, we have another theme of big transports in the Orc army being used to carry our juicy meat inside, our knob packs, our flash kit packs, our tank buster bricks, all those kinds of gits. You gotta keep them safe inside your transports and wait for those opportune moments to strike at your opposing gits. And what better to help bubble wrap your lads than putting them in a big Zoggin Knight for only 265 points. So for that, I'd put the Gorkonite in grade A greenskins, because it's cheap, because it transports lads, because once the lads get out of it, it's just a big Zoggin tank that can go flip vehicles or shoot some chaff units off the board. And it's particularly really good in Dreadmob, as is the design of it, I believe. Giving the Gorkonite lethal hits in addition to the sustained hits it already gets is pretty good. I like it a lot. Big shells for bigger gits to make that big Deathstorm Mega Shooter 2 damage. Really Zoggin good, lads. And the Morkanite, its brother here, Morkanite is more expensive at 280 points. I believe that's because it comes built in with a 5-up invuln save off of its force field versus the Gorkonite that doesn't. And the Morkanite also has more anti-elite / anti-tank shooting weapons with high damages versus the Gorkonite's chaff clearing. I'd say the Morkanite's a little worse just because it's not as geared towards melee and it is more expensive than the cheaper Gorkonite. But again, 280 for a Knight chassis is still cheap when you're comparing it to them Imperial and Chaos Knights. But because of its weird niche-ness, I'd probably put in Fine Gits. Still not bad. You're gonna run it in Dreadmob. But yeah, that's where they put it. Next up is me first love, me baby, me lovely Stomper. We love the Stomper, lads. Every Orc player loves the Zoggin Stomper. It's just a shame that G-Dub does not. They tote it around as the biggest plastic model that they've ever made. I don't know if that's still the case, because it's been many, many years since the Stomper is released. It's probably due for a refresh. I don't know what they just do with it, but it's definitely shown its age. But at 800 points for one Stomper, that is just too much. I get it. Whatever it points at usually dies in shooting, and then if it's able to somehow get around a building to charge something in that same turn as well, it's probably going to kill whatever it charged in addition. But for something that big, and you're paying that many points for, it better kill 2 units a turn. Because otherwise, you're just going to get outpaced. It's durable, but only to a certain fault. I mean, toughness 14 is really Zoggin good. 2-up save, really good. 30 wounds, really good. And a built-in 6-up invuln save, which will become a 5 during the war. So it's very, very hard to take down. But if that's all your opponent's got to worry about, because at 800 points, again, you're not taking a whole lot else if you're running one of these, I still think that the Stomper could drop 100 points down to 700 and still not be like super viable. Because even if this thing was super Zoggin cheap, it's still so hard to put on a table. It's like how them Imperial Guard players have troubles running the Bane Blades and whatnot. Usually you can just deploy them Bane Blades in your deployment zone and then it just stays there for the whole game, just because it can't physically move through the terrain or around the board due to how terrain rules work. And the Stomper's no different. It's so wide. Most gaps between buildings is only going to be at max 5, maybe 6 inches. But the Stomper's like 7 or 8 inches wide. So most of the time it just can't even move. And whereas with the Bane Blades, they just want to shoot you. The Stomper wants to shoot and then charge you. And if it can't charge you because it just can't physically move, then what's it doing? So it's going to go and need some fixing. I can't say it's Zoggin useless, because I can see a world where the Stomper becomes good. It's just not a world that we're living in, and it's not one that I foresee us living in anytime soon. And then to round it all off, we have the Big Ed Boss Bunker. It is our token fortification unit. Most armies in the game received a fortification unit, either from this edition or previous edition. I don't know why. Fortifications used to be a thing in past editions. They were always weird and janky. They had specific rules that you could only run with certain units in certain armies. They gave you a weird niche buff for most of the time, way too many points that you were spending on it. And the boss head bunker's no different. It is 135 points for a vehicle that does not move, if it even counts as a vehicle. I don't even know. Okay, it is a vehicle. It can hold 11 gits, and its ability is whenever an orc unit is within 6 inches of it, they get +1 leadership. And its ranged weapon, its big, scary ranged weapon, the Gaze of Gork, is an 18-inch range gun. One shot. Hitting on a 5. At strength 12, AP 4, 3 flat damage, sustain hits D3. Remember, this is a fortification, so you have to deploy it in your deployment zone, and you can't move it. And its main big gun is 18-inch range for 135 points. For a gun with one shot, 18-inch range, and a 6-inch aura of +1 leadership to the orcs that are going to immediately be leaving your deployment zone to go crump some gits. The Big Head Boss Bunker is awful. It is probably the worst unit in our book, partially because of just how it's designed, but also because whereas with the Plains, the Pain Boss, and the Werboy here, I can see how G-Dub could fix these units in 10th edition and make them at the very least not shit. I have no idea how you can make the Boss Head Bunker good and worth running. So because of it, that's where it goes. And with that, that is everything, lads. Take your screenshots, do what you gotta do. This is, in my opinion, currently post-September Dataslate, this is how good every single orc unit is in the game. So if you're looking to run competitive orcs, I definitely start with looking at all of these units up here in Chosen of Gork and Mork. In terms of detachments, I would look at either Warhorde or Bully Boys or Green Tide. But Warhorde for sure. The other two might be a bit experimental. Down in Grade A Greenskins, any of these, if you were to run them, I would not blame you. Especially the Kill Rig, maybe even the Gorkanaut, but definitely the Kill Rig. If you ran some of these lads, I would not blame you at all. That's probably going to be pretty good, and they're definitely on the up and rise. Fine Gits, could use some help, but it's not awful. Anything down here needs some fixins, I'd stay away from. And then of course, Zog and Useless, you're better off just taking a Sharpie and sharpieing out all of these units out of your Codex. Don't even look at them unless you're trying to play a meme list, or you're doing some funny Git stuff, or maybe you're playing Crusade, or some other narrative type event, or if you're just choosing to collect them just because you like the models, because the Plains are for sure very, very pretty models, and I wouldn't blame you for picking one up just because you think it looks fucking cool. So yeah, so that's everything I've got for you today, lads. Let me know what you think. Tier lists, they're pretty fun, but they do take quite a long time. So, wondering whether it is I want to run something like this in the future. And now that I'm looking at it, I am blocking some of these lower units down here. So, that's my bad. Well, regardless, let me know what you think, lads, down below. Thanks for watching the video. Daily Crumper out.